What's going on, YouTubers, gamers and hobbyists, and welcome to another episode of Hobby 1-to-1, episode 4, and this is preparing plastic miniatures. And this is the miniature I'm going to be using. I picked this one up from Salute, obviously, a couple of years back, so 2015, as you can see there on the packaging. Nice plastic miniature on a sprue. And obviously I'm going to be using these tools. As you can see, I'm going to be using files, the cutter, the mold line remover, and the hobby knife. Okay, so let's get going with this bad boy. Now, first thing I need to do is take it out of the packaging, and it's in a Ziploc bag with the cardboard on top. Some come in boxes, some come in bags, so we'll just open that one up. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to have a look what pieces we need to remove from the sprue, but before that we need to ascertain if it has any mold release on it, and the best way to do that is by holding it up to the light, and if you see any shiny bits on anywhere, then you need to scrub that off. And the best thing I can recommend for that is soapy water and an old toothbrush, much like we did with the metal miniature. So the next thing is to start clipping the pieces you want from the sprue. Careful not to cut too close to it, otherwise you don't want to damage the piece you're removing. Make sure you take off only the pieces you either know you need or what you want to one side. On a model this small, you can pretty much cut off every piece you need. Even this one has options on it as well. Now, some areas you'll need to use the hobby knife or X-Acto knife to get to, because the areas are simply too small for cutters. So just be careful when you use the knife to do that. So it's just a matter of choosing which options you want. You know, in this particular instance, I'm choosing this head for example, and I choose not to go with the bow. That's the weapon. I choose to go with like that long-handled hammer thing he's got. So you know, there's options, but there's also extras to put on the base as well. And I just cut off all the ones I wanted and just put them to one side. Once I have all the pieces before me that I need, I then go about preparing them, getting rid of any detritus or little bits of flash. And I can use my mold line remover, my file, or indeed my hobby knife to do that. So whatever works best for you. I usually find a combination of all of them. And I usually always start with the base if I can, depending on the model. And depending on how it's positioned, so that I may want to paint it in pieces. I mean, some models really are awkward to get to, so it all depends on the pose of the model, but for most infantry models you can pretty much get away with assembling them first. Now when you've been preparing it for a bit, use an old brush or like a Citadel flash brush to just get off any dust and little bits that are hanging around. Here I'm using the mold line remover on the inside of his boot, because there was a mold line on there, and I just scrape that off. The mold line remover removes it easily. Like I say, a combination of files, and you may need to select different size files or shape files, and yeah, just make sure you've got every little bit off before you start gluing, and make sure you go through each of the pieces in turn. And that really is the key. How they say preparation is the key, and it really is. Some of these little bits here, which are like additions to the base, as it were, they're going to get stuck into the base. So I use my mold line remover, and then I use the file changing files actually there. If you're doing something and it's not feeling right, or it's not working, like you're filing and it doesn't feel like it's coming off, maybe your file needs changing, or maybe you should try a different method. But just work as far as you can, you know, because you don't want to damage anything, and some of these pieces are quite small indeed, or thin, and like these the arrows on the model itself as well. So just make sure you go through each piece and don't proceed to the next stage until you're happy that all the flash has been thoroughly removed. Okay, once that's done, I'm ready to begin gluing my model together. And I always start with the legs or whatever's at the bottom end of the model to the base. So work from the base upwards. I mean, I say whatever because it isn't always legs, it could be wheels or tentacles or whatever. But doing that will give you a more solid grip to hold the model with. Once it's dry, you can then hold it by the base and do what I'm doing now, because the next thing I'm doing here is putting the arms on, and I'm just scoring with my hobby knife the areas where the arms are going to glue against, so that the poly cement has a real good chance to get in, and it melts the join better, I find, if you score it. And just pop that one on. Then the best thing I found with arms, whether he's holding a gun or a sword or whatever, is sometimes one arm will be like, it'll have a hand holding a handle or whatever, and it's awkward to line up the two arms. Make sure you put one on, because the beauty of poly cement is it takes ages to dry. Well, not ages, but it takes a while to dry, a good deal longer than say super glue. So you've got a little bit of wiggle time. So give it enough time to start drying so that it's not solid, but it's not like falling off. And that will give you the best chance of being able to manipulate like your arms together. Right, so what I did was I just popped the other arm on, and now I'm just gluing the little bits that go onto the base. That's like a spear with a hatchet in it, and around the back I'm putting some arrows on top of the quiver that are like stuck in the ground, and I think that looks quite nice. And then it's just a case of letting the model dry and not playing around with it too much. You don't want to assemble too much of the model all in one go, otherwise there's a tendency to do too much fiddling and things fall off, and that's very bad. Anyway, this is how this one turned out. I'm quite pleased with how that one turned out. And what you'll find is if you start with a small model on plastics and then gradually work your way up in different sizes, I like, for instance, I started with like Warhammer Space Marine, and I progressed to like Dreadnought sizes, and then to drop pods and tanks and things like that. You know, it's the principles are all the same no matter what size the model. I mean, the material is plastic, the details are all there, and you know, they need to be looked after, and the mold lines removed and everything else. So yeah, so that is my preparation of plastics for you. So there is the model then, all ready for priming, which we'll come on to in another video. So thank you very much for watching this episode of Hobby 1-to-1. If you'd like to support me, please check out my Patreon page on the link which is either on the screen or in the video description below, or both. And yeah, head on over there, give that a check out, and if you fancy it, then you know your support is always welcome. If not, just please like and share and subscribe. As always, remember, all brushes lead to war. And I will see you on the next video. Bye for now, folks. Bye bye.